Please be informed there is a Santa Claus.
You look like you're sinking.
I'm sinking.
That's why I doubled up on the back
What do
pillow.
you mean I'm sinking? I'm just trying to let my crotch show.
Let it show. Give the people what they want, Tanya. Give the people what they want.
Party hard, y'all. Party hard.
Thanks, Tony. That's our producer, Tony.
Does that mean we're rolling? Hello. Hello. Hey, Tanya, congratulations. Congratulations. Ooh, spill the water. Hey, congratulations. We did it. Congratulations. We're here.
It's happening.
All right, everyone. This is the Acid for Squares podcast. Episode 1. I'm Cody Blue.
I'm Tanya Dahl.
I don't know why I added a
I
question
don't
mark
know.
behind it. Because
Cody
I'm
Blue?
not exactly sure what we're doing here. No, I am sure what we're doing here.
I mean, we talked about it.
We
so,
did.
yeah.
We did talk about it.
We planned.
I think the first thing we need to do is give a little introduction into who and what we are.
Yeah.
I'll go.
You do it.
Do
yeah,
it?
yeah. You're
Okay.
good at this.
We are Acid for Squares. You click the button. You already know that part, but we are a multimedia entity based out of Los Angeles. We make conscious content for the Western mind. And the first podcast we did together was called Awaken Underground. I hosted, you
Yeah.
directed, got us nominated for an iHeartRadio Award, did good for us, and it was all about healing with psychedelic medicines. And the thing was, when we were making that show, we had a serious question to answer every time we made an episode, and that was essentially, do we cross the line?
Do we get weird with it?
Yeah, do we get weird?
Or do we stay more
we-
secular and,
Right. Do we keep it as
Scientific.
grounded as humanly possible so we don't turn people off to psychedelic medicines that could benefit from them?
which was good though, because we had doctors and scientists on there and stuff like that. So it was really important. That's what we did.
Right. And
But we
that,
still got nominated for a spirituality podcast.
right, and that's kind of what took us to this point in time. But I remember episode 10, I don't know if you remember this, Tanya, but do you remember being like having to decide whether we were going to bring in the alien component of psychedelic medicines?
Oh, of course I remember
Right.
it. Yeah.
And instead, we decided to bring on Deepak Chopra and bring on an integration and preparation specialist to teach people how to prepare and where to go to work with the medicines.
And how to integrate, because integration is the number one thing you need to be doing if you're working with psychedelics.
Right. And I feel like this show is, we're going to tell the full truth.
Yep.
We're going to say the stuff that, to be honest, I was too afraid to say. And I mean, you were always, I'm just going to be real. Like, you were always had the courage to speak the full truth about the nature of these ceremonies and these practices. And I didn't. And, I am sorry for that. I apologized to you before, but it was terrifying for me. I mean, one, I don't want to lose work. I don't want people to lose respect for me. I don't want people to think I'm crazy. I don't want to lose less respect for myself. I mean, I grew up as a secular, scientific person. I came to psychedelic medicines to heal depression and anxiety because I read good science on them.
Good science.
I had no idea that these ceremonies were going to, transport me to a higher dimension of consciousness where you interface with non-corporeal beings
All
that heal
kinds
you
of
and
strange beings.
tell you some shit, how to fix the world, how to fix yourself.
Just the small things,
No big deal.
No big deal.
No big deal.
Be not afraid.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But to me, the healing is miracle. I mean, for those who didn't listen to our first show, Awaken Underground, which we highly recommend, you go check it out. It's 10 episodes. You start on episode 1. But for those that don't know, when I started exploring alternative medicine, I took the money that the studio paid me and I put it towards working with all these different healers. And I ended up in the Amazon rainforest working with shamans of the Shipibo tribe. And I was so scientifically minded, I got brain scans before and after on my brain. And after several weeks in the jungle, it completely rewired my brain. It healed 3 concussions from sports-induced concussions from childhood, and changed my life so much. I brought my whole family to work with these medicines. Now, the part that we don't tell in our original show, is the part that has to do with ETs, has to do with extraterrestrials,
Or just entities in general.
entities, spirituality, yeah, any of that. We allude to it in the first episode because my dad brings it up on
That's
the first
right.
episode. But that's it. So the story I want to tell to sort of frame this whole thing is that at that time I had got hired to write a movie about Dr. John Mack. Now, Dr. John Mack was the president of psychiatry in the 90s. He's a Nobel Peace Prize nominee, a Pulitzer Prize winner. He was academic royalty. He is the most acclaimed academic to ever validate abduction syndrome, which is people that believe they were abducted by aliens or another force. So I was fascinated. What makes somebody at the top of their game, at the tippy top, go down such a rabbit hole of lunacy, and sacrifice everything? I mean, this guy was essentially, after he came out about this, he was put on trial by Harvard. He's the only tenured professor to ever be put on trial and impeached the way he was.
That's
still
so wild.
to this day. It's wild. He lost his wife. All of his friends, just essentially, blacklisted him. I mean, Carl Sagan and Thomas Kuhn and
They're
all
like, you don't talk about ETs. How dare you?
They literally made him a pariah. They wouldn't talk to him. He became persona non grata.
Crazy.
So I was fascinated, right? And I'm like, wow, this is a great movie. I didn't expect working on this to change my life forever, because as soon as I started working on it, the producer brought me a big hard drive and a mound of books and files on the subject matter and handed it to me. And at that point, I'm working during the day, directing. I think I was directing a pilot for a studio. And at night, smoking weed and pouring through these fucking files. And what I learned changed my life forever.
What'd you learn, Cody?
What did I learn? I mean, what did I learn is the overwhelming percentage of people that believe they were abducted by aliens. I discovered that an African bushman and New England housewife have the same exact experience, verbatim, and how suppressed it is and how common it is across all cultures. And I think the thing that really freaked me out was when I started listening to the people who were abducted. I started listening to them recount their abductions. So he would use something, a breathing technique popularized by Stanislav Grof called holotropic breath, and he would have these people breathe in a very specific rhythmic pattern. It would put them in an altered state of consciousness, and they would recount their abduction. These people, when they were recounting their abductions, they were screaming at the top of their lungs.
That's so scary.
Yeah, screaming, "Please God, why me? Help, please, please." It was horrific. And I'm not proud of this, but
Also, you're high listening to this?
that's what I mean. It freaked me
Jesus,
out. It was
Cody.
not the move. It was not the move. I'm not even kidding. I literally stopped smoking weed from this for a long time. I was sleeping with the lights on. I had to stop. So
Oh my
it
God.
changed my life. But then comes time in the development process where I have to go meet his patients 20 years later. And I start sitting down with his patients that I'm listening to his tapes. By the way, Dr. Mack is long dead, unfortunately. But when I meet with his patients, every single one of them is a shaman.
Now?
Yeah. When I sat with them, they were a shaman, a mystic, a healer of sorts. I was like,
Were they like this before?
no, they weren't. And so I'm a little confused. So I started asking them about it, and they were very cryptic, and it's funny. The producer used to call it at the time the new gay. She would always say that this is that nobody wants to talk about. Everyone's very closeted, and you get someone to talk about it. They're not going to tell you everything. They're going to be very cryptic about things because they don't want to risk being ostracized. So when I started interviewing them and asking them about their experiences, I said, "Do you still have these experiences?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, well, what's it like?" And they said,
They still have extraterrestrial
they
experiences?
still have the abduction experience, but the entire experience itself has changed over time, and it's become essentially a celestial phenomenon. Just beings of light. They are now non-corporeal. And essentially what I found out is essentially that the experience itself was being filtered through the prism of their own cosmology, their own Western perspective.
Everything.
Yeah.
Our perspective is literally everything.
Right. We don't see things as they are. We see
Everything
things
is we are.
as we are.
Yeah.
Exactly. When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So TV and movies, this programming of fear around the paranormal or an interface with something that is non-human they were experiencing it through that filter.
It's like, how many other things are we seeing through our own filter, though, on a daily basis that we're not even aware of, though?
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything is
And
being
something so extreme like that, where it could be so horrifying, but then your perspective changes and all of a sudden you see it as like angelic.
Right.
That's very, very opposite.
Right. Right. I mean, look at animals. I mean, it's the same thing with animals. You know, we have, there's tons of animals we view as pestilence. And the sight of them, they're disgusting, get it? But, you know, and then there's other people that have them as pets.
Yeah.
You know?
Or people that actually know what they do for our environment. And they're like, actually, they're really important for the ecosystem.
Exactly. And everything has a place and a purpose, and it's all in harmony and balance.
So it's really about understanding something.
Yes.
So if you don't understand something, you're going to automatically assume that it's bad or negative until you learn about it.
100%. And just like anything, even if it's your gut biome, it's not, we used to think, you got to kill the bad bacteria. It's not. It's about creating a harmonic ecosystem within your gut.
Yeah.
And that makes a healthy gut. It's the same thing with an environment. And it's sort of this weird operating system we have as a people where we think like that's the bad guy and this is the good guy and we have to kill the bad guy. It's like, no, we're all one, we're all connected. We have to learn how to come together in harmony.
So what ended up happening after you started interviewing these people?
Okay, so these people, I find out that they're still being abducted, quote unquote, but it's not really, they don't view it as an abduction anymore, and it is a spiritual experience, and that what these abductions actually were some sort of initiation that they were put through. And actually, Dr. Mack, part of his treatment for these people, because when he came out about this, part of this was he felt all these people who were claimed to be abducted were closeted. They were closeted and ashamed about being abducted. So he felt that for their healing, a big part of it was they had to come out into the public and tell the truth about their experience. So he did, and you can find it online of him on Oprah with his patients.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that. That's right.
It's they laugh.
Yeah.
They laugh at them. Like it is, they were
Was that the
humiliated.
80s or the 90s?
It's the 90s.
Yeah, people weren't ready for that shit then.
Not at all. Not at
I mean,
all.
they're barely ready now.
Yeah. And I feel like the internet's helped. I feel like we're more ready. But
Thank you, Internet. You've done something right.
But our attention span's so bad. The government's coming out and whistleblowers
Yeah.
and everyone's
like,
like, oh my
"It's all
God.
real."
And they're like, ooh, what's that? Like,
Ooh, shiny keys.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, part of Dr. Mack's treatment for his patients was to get them to come out, and they were humiliated. So was he. Harvard was humiliated. That's why they did what they did. They wanted to distance themselves. That's why they put him on trial. But interestingly enough, part of his treatment was he would take them to specific tribes in remote tribes that actually had the quote-unquote alien abduction phenomenon as part of their orthodoxy.
That's really cool that he did that.
He did, because he wanted them to experience a culture where it was not taboo, it was not weird, and how it was integrated with them.
And was this in South Africa still? Or was this...
I don't remember exactly. I don't know if it was an Aboriginal tribe. There's many, many tribes and indigenous,
for sure.
Right,
There's a
indigenous
lot.
people all over, the star people. As they call them.
Literally everyone.
Yeah, every tribe. It's really just
Everyone.
us.
Yeah, we're the only ones that are like, no.
Yeah, we're young
no.
though. We're a young culture. You know,
Yeah, the Western culture is like very young. We're teenagers. We're like rebellious. We're like, no.
we ain't got roots. We ain't got roots. But so one of the things that happened, he took his patients to these tribes, and sure enough, like this really healed them because they got to see that this is a
Sacred experience.
it's a sacred experience.
Yeah.
And actually their experience itself is identical to the shamanic initiation that the shamans and the medicine people give the people, and that their ability to communicate with the star people, the higher dimensions, the celestial realms, that phenomenon was what made you a shaman. That's what made you a medicine man.
Interesting.
A very fascinating phenomenon was Dr. Mack's patients themselves. A lot of them were misdiagnosed with schizophrenia because that is the box that this goes into, the abduction syndrome for as long as modern psychiatry has existed. You get pushed, under the mattress, under the carpet, right?
I mean, that makes sense, though, because shamans talk to the spirit realm. They're literally 1 foot in, 1 foot out in order to be able to bridge the gap. So
Yes.
that makes sense. If these beings are celestial, then they are doing that. They're bridging the gap so they would be able to speak to them.
100%. And, part of the thing that helped Mac come to sort of this part of his conclusion was he did work with ayahuasca, and he started to work with these medicine people to understand the phenomenon itself better. So
what does this have to do with you, Cody?
Well, what this has to do with me is I meet these people, they're all shamans and shit, and they're being super cryptic and telling me, hey, it changed over time, blah, blah, blah. Well, while I'm doing this movie, I'm going on my journey, right? So I'm trying to heal myself. So I start working with shamans and psychedelic plant medicines.
So this was all happening at the exact same time.
Simultaneously.
I
This
mean,
is 2016.
It's so wild when you actually look back at your life, how everything is so perfectly designed.
Right.
I mean, what are the odds?
No
There's no
coincidences.
coincidences.
No coincidences.
Sorry, continue.
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't know they were related. I'm just like reading How to Change Your Mind and going, oh, Steve Jobs invented the computer on on psychedelic, right? So I'm reading the data and I'm going, oh, this is good. It can regrow brain cells. Like, all right, like let's
Science.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The science was interesting enough. So, yeah, I mean, I go to start, at the time I'm wearing a back brace, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, as I mentioned, I have some concussions that I'm trying to heal, some brain trauma, and I go and I work with psilocybin, with a Mayan shaman, Taos, ayahuasca, wachuma, bobinsana, and vilca, which is DMT, and these are the main plant medicines.
You went full in.
I want
everything.
I went in. It started with psilocybin. And the psilocybin experience itself, I walked into with a back brace and from a stress fracture on my spine. And after this ceremony, it completely healed my spine. A physical fracture on my spine. I've never worn the back brace again. And what's that, 8 years ago?
Yeah.
But the healing is one thing. The experience itself is something entirely different. The experience itself was leaving my body, going to another dimension that was non-corporeal, non-physical, interfacing with a consciousness, and specifically wanted to talk about my fear of aliens, my fear of ETs. Specifically, the communication was, and by the way, I'm freaking out. The whole experience, I'm like, oh, fuck, what did I do? Oh my God, I'm fucking with witchcraft. Oh my God, the Christians were right. Like, what am I doing? Like, it is scary. It's a scary experience. And of course, the consciousness you're interfacing with is like, don't worry, everything's okay. It's okay. You've done this before.
Here's a
breathe.
blanket.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
they're
right.
real, like talk to me like I'm a baby. But it was very much about aliens. And they're like, they're showing me visuals and I'm like, I don't want to talk about the aliens. Like, please, I don't want. And they're like, they're not aliens. Stop calling them aliens. They're not aliens. We need to confront this, your fear. Long story short, this healing, I actually make it out of that ceremony with really confronting my fear of aliens, but it healed my back. So I said, okay, this shit's real. I'm going to Peru, and I'm gonna work with the master teachers. I'm gonna work with ayahuasca and wachuma, and I go, and we detail this again on Awaken Underground. But first ceremony, ayahuasca, intense vibration comes in, and I feel and hear multiple beings around me talking about me like I'm on a fucking gurney in a hospital. What's wrong with me, what they need to do, like, how they can fix me up. And I become aware of them and go, holy shit, I get scared. And they become aware that I'm aware of them. And they start trying to calm me down again. Hey, calm down. Don't worry. It's okay. Sure enough, I sit in weeks of these ceremonies having to confront these beings, confront this experience. It did heal me, these ceremonies, but I was freaked out. Everyone, if you go into a big circle, everyone has an experience. There's one person that freaks the fuck out. That was me. I came back for Christmas dinner. Christmas dinner. I sit at Christmas dinner, me and my brother. We start telling, my mom goes, so how was ayahuasca? And my whole extended family looks at me and my brother, who I went to Amazon with, and we tell the story, these crazy stories. And my mom goes, I want to do ayahuasca.
By the way, his mom is like completely straight edge, like
my whole
doesn't drink.
family.
That the whole family, like, so this is a very huge thing to be like, I want to go to the
Right.
jungle and do ayahuasca.
New
Like
York,
it's not-
Italian.
yeah,
she
but
goes,
like straight edge.
Yeah, straight edge. She goes, I want to do ayahuasca. And me and my brother look, Mom, no, you don't want to do, you never even smoked weed, but smoke weed, like anything, but don't go to the hardest psychedelic known to man. And she goes, you said it's a medicine, not a drug. I want to do the medicine with my babies. And sure enough, she heads to the jungle and she does like, I don't know, twice as many ceremonies as me and my brother. And my mother
She's a warrior.
Her fourth night of ceremony, her third night of ceremony doing ayahuasca, she's told by the medicine, don't drink for your fourth ceremony. My mom doesn't drink. She goes to her fourth ceremony, doesn't have a cup. So it's been, and the way this center does it, they do a day of rest. So she's been out of the medicine for almost 48 hours. Fourth ceremony, she sits in, does not have a cup of medicine. The ceremony starts. She astral projects from her body, goes into space, This shit's crazy. Can't let me tell this. This is like me coming out of the closet without telling this like so publicly. My mom astral protects from her body, goes into space, is confronted by a giant snake that eats her.
Which is very normal, actually,
Very
for
normal.
ayahuasca ceremonies, is the serpent that meets you and then destroys you.
Right. Part of the, as you can call it whatever you want, a shamanic initiation is you have to die or confront death fearlessly. So this giant serpent goes to eat my mom, and my mom goes, Mother Ayahuasca, why are you trying to eat me? I'm a mother, you're a mother, we're both mothers, why do you want to eat me? And sure enough, this serpent spirit thing turns into an Egyptian god, Ra, and says, oh, there's only so much I can teach you because of your soul agreement before you came down here. But I can introduce you to your medical team. Would you like to meet them? And she goes, sure.
Just fearless Suzette. Okay, sure.
Takes my mom onto a fucking spaceship, and she meets 8 aliens in pairs of 2s, 4 different races. My mom comes back. She goes, Cody, don't be afraid of the aliens. She's like, they're good. They're our friends. I met them. Don't be afraid. Drags my ass to Costa Rica, sits me in several medicine ceremonies, and heals my fear, and I have to confront this.
Talked about the Doctorcitos.
When I first went to my first ceremony, I'm sitting there, and the shaman, the late, great Don Howard,
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Thank you for everything. He explains to us the Doctorcitos. So he says, okay, so the shamans are going to whistle and they're going to sing these songs, and these songs will call in the Doctorcitos, the spirit doctors, and they will operate on you, and they work in conjunction with the medicine. So when I heard this, I'm like, haha, animism, whatever. I just thought this was the anthropomorphization of some natural phenomenon, like a very secular, scientific Western perspective. Science. Guess what? I'm an idiot. That shit was 100% real and scary, but real. And, and these forces and beings and spirits come in and they work on you like you're in a hospital, straight up. And you can see like you're in an interdimensional hospital and you are on a table and they are working on you. Swear to God. And I was closeted with this, didn't want to tell anyone this for years because I don't want to lose credibility. But guess what? Fuck it. Don't give a fuck anymore. The truth is the truth is the truth is the truth. And
also, Cody, when he came out of his ceremony, because he was terrified of the ETs that he saw, working on him, he went up to Don Howard and he was like, so aliens aren't real, right? And Don Howard's like, oh, actually, those are the Doctorcitos. That's who we call in. Those are the medical team that come to work on you.
Right. Yeah, the next day when I went up to, he was at breakfast and there were like a whole table of people talking to him. And I'm like, excuse me, Mr. Howard? Aliens aren't real, right? And the whole table looked at me and their heads turned slowly at the same time. And they looked at me and sort of was like, oh, I remember when I had my first beer. Like that was the vibe I got from them. And they all proceeded to tell individual stories of interacting with the same exact thing, seeing the same thing. I remember the first talking, the talking circle, the integration circle, the day after the first ceremony, everyone had drawn the beings. Not everyone, I'd say about 8, 9 people. And they were showing each other and they were all the same exact thing. And interestingly enough, everybody had seen these tall, shadowy beings guarding the doors of the Maloka. And I say, so maybe 8 people had the drawings. I'd say 7 of them had these drawings and they were very dark. One woman who was a therapist from Canada, she had them light, same thing, but they were very more like celestial and angelic. So we asked Don Howard, we said, hey, why is that so? Why did she see it this way? And we all saw it this way. And he said, depending on the part of your psyche that the medicine is working on at the time, depends on how you will perceive the beings you are interfacing with. Now, perspective. So this takes us into Tanya. So after this, this changed me forever. Started doing healing work, started holding mushroom ceremonies, doing energy work on people, and my biggest pride and joy would be helping people get to the medicines. And when I would meet certain people, it was obvious that that the medicine could help them, right? I know being on pharmaceuticals and suffering with mental and really mood disorders, not that the pharmaceutical model not helping and needing help. So I look to pay that forward. That's why we made Awaken Underground, and we have been able to help a lot of people with that. Now, me and Tanya meet one day.
Yeah, Cody and I met the day after Christmas coming down from Big Bear. We were both up there with our families and we met as friends and we're like, oh, like let's hang out. So we ended up meeting up because we both were directors. I was terrified of aliens. There was a lot of similarities that he definitely saw. And again, he would bring people to the medicine. So he was like, oh, we should like sit down and actually talk about this.
Yeah, very similar archetypally. I mean, and you were on ADD medication. Yeah. It was very much, used to front a rock band for 6 years. I used to front a New York hardcore band for 6 years. Very much the same thing. But the fear of aliens was the thing that made me go,
oh, okay.
I gotta help this girl.
Yeah. So Cody and I end up hanging out and talking about the ETs, and I'm telling about how terrified I am of them. And I remember like growing up with my dad would love to watch the X-Files, and that music,
so scary.
So scary. And I would plug my ears and I would run and be like, no, and like run into the bedroom because I didn't want to hear the X-Files song because the aliens. I didn't want to talk about the aliens.
Same.
Yes, it was terrifying.
Same.
I also like always had the ability to like see spirits and stuff, which is really terrifying as a child, especially because my family wasn't religious or anything like that, so I didn't know what was going on. I was just scared. My parents also didn't have experiences like that. Nobody around me had experiences like that.
Yeah, when I met you, you said places aren't haunted, people are.
Yeah, that was my stock line because I
remember that.
Eventually was like, I'm haunted. That's what it felt like. Oh my God. But anyway, so Cody and I are sitting there and he's like, you need to go to ayahuasca. And this is literally the third time, like third time's a charm. My friends Eric and Danielle, they were the first ones to say they'd just done ayahuasca a couple years back. And then like an Akashic Records reader's like, Mother Ayahuasca's calling you. And I was like, okay. And then Cody said it and I was like, oh, damn.
And I was like, and come do it with my mom. She hands out diapers beforehand.
You never trust a fad on ayahuasca.
Never trust a fad on ayahuasca. That's what my mom would say.
That's
she hands out
line.
diapers. No joke.
Okay, so leading up to this, Cody and I are talking and he goes, just so you know, I just want to warn you, like that the aliens, this is what happened to me and like it's okay, but they can appear. And I was like, you need to stop talking to me about the aliens. I was getting so mad. I was like, your experience doesn't mean it's going to be my experience. Like, just stop talking about the aliens. At one point, I literally got so mad and like snapped at you. I was like, no,
yeah, you yelled at me.
No more alien talk. I can't deal with this.
I got checked. Yeah. You were like,
I was like, and this is enough alien talk.
Yeah, you never again.
Never again.
We didn't have a pre-ceremony conversation after that.
Well, definitely not about aliens.
And by the way, we are not together at this time.
No.
We are hooking up on the low, but we are no, it's the truth. We were not an item.
Yeah, we had just started kind of hanging out in that way.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we go to ceremony. And first of all, I walk in and everybody's dressed in white. And I was like, oh my God, it's a cult. This is it.
I thought the same thing.
I was like, I've joined a cult.
I thought the same thing when I first walked in. I thought the same thing. I was like, what have I gotten myself into? I literally had to pull them aside. Like, why are we all wearing white? And they're like, the shamans, I was given two reasons. The first one was, whoa, it was like, the shamans, they can see your aura better.
Yeah, but it really is just like they can see you in the dark.
Yeah,
it's pitch black.
No, it was right. It was a far more practical reason.
Yes. Yeah. It's like, because white is more reflective. Like, we need to make sure you're not dying.
Yeah, exactly, because we need to see you in the darkness. Okay.
So I was like, oh my God, I'm in a cult, right? And I meet Cody's mom, which makes me feel like a lot better. I don't know why, even though I'd never met her before, just having like a mom there, especially like his mom, and your brother Shane.
It's a family affair.
Yeah, and Shane's actually the one that Cody went to the jungle with the first time. And his friend Greg. But so Shane and Suzette are there. And so we're about to like go into ceremony and Cody has not spoke about the aliens in a couple of days, so that's good.
She'll find out on her own when she's ready. When you're ready, they show you.
Yeah. So anyway, so I take my first cup and I mean, get jolted into a fractal reality that is, I feel like I'm on a conveyor belt flying through this fractally world. There's like snakes and dragons and all that sort of stuff, right? But outside of the fractals, I can tell that there's something there. And I was like, because I know the feeling of like a spirit or something like that being there because I felt it my whole life. So I was like, hey, telepathically, I'm not like speaking out loud and like ruining the ceremony for everybody. I'm like, hey, so I know this is kind of, these fractals are kind of like a distraction or something. I'm like, I know that you're there. I was like, I'm not afraid. Like, can you show me what you look like? Because it's kind of weird that you're like hiding behind fractals. It's like making it a little bit more like awkward, like voyeur, not fun. So I was like, hey, can you show me what you look like? I'm not afraid. And all of a sudden, like, I remember my eyes being open and looking up at the ceiling, and this like hole opens and there's 3 ETs staring down at me. And now old Tanya, before ayahuasca, would have been like, oh my God, and start running and just like terrified, right? But instead, my reaction was I started crying.
Because I had prepared her a little.
I started crying and I was like, oh my God, my beautiful friends, I'm home. And I'm crying, staring at these ETs, and I have never felt this sense of home before. And I know this sounds really, really wild, and especially just because of how we perceive the idea of extraterrestrials. But this feeling that I got was unlike anything I could ever describe. And they start like working on me, and there's smaller extraterrestrials that seem like gray aliens that are doing the like actual physical work, and they don't talk though. They kind of just like, I'm doing my job, like, so why you work, like they're like, oh, they're kind of like the
Machine
seven
elves.
dwarves.
Yeah.
Like
Where do you think that came from? The whole elf mythos comes from.
But they don't look like elves. They look like little gray aliens
it's
with
a
like
children's
fractals over
story.
their face.
It's all a distortion of semantics and time of
Semantics.
but yeah, of course, yeah, 100%.
So these guys are working on me, and then the taller beings are basically like making me feel like I'm kind of like their child, or that they love us so much. Like they kept showing me this little squishy fluffy puppy and being like, oh, you're so cute. You're just so cute. And I was like, oh my God, they think of us as like a little squishy fluffy puppy.
Yeah.
And so I'm being worked on and whatever. And then
We're children.
Yeah. And I look around and I was like, oh my God, I have been here before. I have done this before. It felt so familiar. And I was like, we're in a hospital. This is what you do. You take the sacrament to be able to choose to go to the hospital where you're worked on by these ethereal beings. And it was the wildest thing ever, because you can feel like the poking and prodding and stuff like that. And mind you, I'm just saying this was our personal experience. Not everyone has this experience, but a lot of people,
common.
but it's pretty common.
Everyone in my family, I mean, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do, but also there's people that don't. And also the medicine gives you what you can handle. So
and it's filtered through the prism of your own psyche.
Yeah.
So, and also it's almost, I've heard someone call it like spiritual Pictionary. So they're going to use the symbols and the totems and the iconography that communicates what it needs to communicate with you. Even for us itself, where, it has changed over time for us. So keep going. So, I mean, I know that's kind of the punchline is like you realize that, I wasn't fucking kidding.
It just changed everything for me. And I started to really want to understand what this meant, because I had never had an experience like that, because these entheogenic plant medicine, they really give you like face-to-face communication, which even if you're you have extrasensory abilities and you're able to perceive spirits and stuff like that, or if you've seen ghosts or whatever it may be, it's on a completely different level when you're interfacing inside the medicine. And so it began, the thing that was my greatest fear became the thing that now I love the most and seek to understand.
Right.
And so that's, Cody and I, that's like what we do now. We seek to understand the supernatural. We seek to understand the things that we don't seem to understand. And also the things that our ancestors have literally been talking about since the beginning of time, have etched in stone, have all this stuff. And I just have to say, it's super messed up that all these historians and archaeologists and all that stuff are like, well, everything that the ancient people said is accurate when they're talking about their cows and how they built stuff. But then as soon as they start talking about these beings that came to help them and like change their DNA or taught them how to grow things or whatever,
Right.
maybe all of a
The
sudden they're
culture
like,
bringers.
well, it's myth. It's like so rude.
Well, that's one of the, one of the things. So you see psychedelics and hallucinogens, like even the term hallucinogen, right? You think, you're seeing dragons and unicorns, and that is, for me, is not at all,
You've
the
never
experience.
seen dragons? You saw a dragon.
Yeah, but like it's not.
It's not what you see in movies.
There is an art and a science to this.
Yeah.
For me, I spent years being like, is it a drug? Is it a medicine? Is it good? Is it bad? Should I not? Oh, I'm afraid of it. I'm nervous. What if I lose my mind? And then once you've gone through the initiation and you know how to work with them, there is a whole other, there's go into the baseball game, and then there's understanding the sport of baseball. So what I'm trying to say is there is an art and a science to navigating these realms.
Yeah.
And that is known popularly as shamanism, some people might call it witchcraft. That's the colonial term, Puritan term for it. Druids, soothsayers. I mean, again,
Celtics were doing it to everybody.
it's a game of semantics.
Yeah.
Everyone has a name. Even the term shaman means the one that knows. But the thing is about these ceremonies is shared experience. Tanya's telling her experience about these three beings and them telling her all this stuff, right? I'm on the other side getting pulled into a white void where these three same ET beings in cloaks are presenting Tanya to me and being like, this is, if you want a spiritual relationship, you can have it with this girl and blah, blah, blah. Interestingly, they were very neutral about the whole situation.
Spirit seems to be pretty neutral
When it's real.
When it's real.
Yeah.
If something's
They can't fuck
spreading
with your free will.
Yeah, if it's like spreading, if it's fear, scary, that's like not spirit.
not-
That's your ego.
They can't. No, they can't. It seems it is so neutral.
Yeah.
They can't fuck with your free will, which is sort of the underpinning of all of this phenomenon, which we are going to seek to explore, uncover, and tie together. But what I want to kind of touch upon is this. After this, after I was told I can have this relationship with her, I was also told that you love Tanya. You've always loved Tanya. You should tell her you love her, which I did the next day, even though we weren't dating. I thought it was like a friend thing because it was so neutral when they said it. I was like, yeah, I love you, Tanya. Like, oh, thanks. I love you too.
Oh yeah, love you too.
We went on to fall in love and to start to do ceremonies together, just the two of us.
Yeah.
And that,
Game changer.
the game changer.
It was wild.
That's the game changer.
Yeah.
Because the thing is life itself is one big shared hallucination.
Mm-hmm.
And
We're all a part of the illusion.
right. Reality is essentially a distortion perpetuated by consciousness. We know this. You can go look at the double slit experiment, right? Where we discovered, which essentially created quantum physics because they discovered the observer effect. They realized that when the scientist was not observing the experiment itself had a completely different outcome. Einstein was famous for saying, I refuse to believe that the moon stops being the moon when I am not looking at it. He traveled all the way to verify the double slit experiment, the study that was going on that proved this phenomenon of the observer effect. And he left and famously said, reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one.
Yeah. And the thing is also is that, so we know that everything is energy. The thing is everything is energy, but our bodies are limiters. So
Right.
our senses and everything allow us to perceive things very specifically. So we know that bees and dogs and cats and whatever, all of them see way differently than we do.
Right.
The spectrum of light that they can see,
Right.
the visual light spectrum is so different comparatively. Any of our senses, our touch, our taste, our smell, our hearing, all of that stuff is limited. And these entheogens, these psychedelics actually allow us to open up our field more, to
Yeah.
be able to perceive more what's around us. So actually, when we do these things, we're actually becoming more aware of what's around us all the time.
Right. And that's the thing is, right, so we perceive less than 0.001 of the electromagnetic
Yeah.
spectrum. Same with the acoustic spectrum. We hear less than 0.1% of the acoustic spectrum. And so our brain is a limiting valve. And the
Yeah.
fascinating thing is when I went on my healing journey to quote unquote heal my ADHD and uncover as much as I could about ADHD, everyone had a different perspective on it. Chinese medicine, they were like, it's mucus in the stomach. But in Western allopathic medicine, they believe that it was a lack of blood flow to the prefrontal cortex, and essentially that the part of your brain that limits information so you can focus was underdeveloped or understimulated, right? So they would believe that a normal brain would put on your shoe in the morning, and your brain knows to omit that information so you can go about your day and focus on the task at hand. They believe the ADHD brain does not have that ability, so you're experiencing everything at once at full volume. Essentially, what's happening, though, is it's harder to focus, but you're taking in more information than the average mind. So it is a gift. Actually, working with indigenous people and shamans and training with shamans, they believe that ADHD is essentially a cultural mutation towards the shamanic archetype.
It's an evolution.
Exactly. They believe that it is that if you have ADHD, that you essentially, your brain is evolving beyond sort of this really crude rudimentary mechanism that limits information so you can focus on a simple task at hand, and instead you are opening up to the higher realms of consciousness so you can understand and connect things as one organism and understand things holistically, as opposed to compartmentalizing and understanding a singular thing and then moving.
It's kind of the same thing with autism, because people that are on the spectrum are so open and their senses are heightened all the time. And so it's just like it's an evolutionary mutation that is, we're just not able to understand or handle in the way our society has been built, which is why everything kind of has to shift, because people are evolving and changing.
Well, 100%. And I feel like seeing the indigenous communities and how their relationship with people who have schizophrenia versus ours.
What we would consider schizophrenia.
What we would consider schizophrenia.
Yes.
It shows up in those communities as far more playful. Because it's integrated. In our culture, if I see a schizophrenic homeless man on the street, he is screaming.
Shame. It's just shame. That's
it's the cultural mechanism, right? And if anything, they again believe they are peering into the shamanic realms. I mean, I've always said, imagine if the world was so backwards that these schizophrenics were actually these awakened ninja, people that
but
just
also
haven't cultivated.
Train.
100%.
Even if you have any sort of extrasensory abilities, if you don't, then it's just like random things popping up all the time, and you're like, what's going on?
Well, that's one of the things is I feel like these sensitivities in the modern Western culture, at least how we grew up, they're not understood. There is not an umbrella of understanding around what they mean. So we as people are often pathologized as, you have ADHD, you have depression, you have this, you have that, and medicated, as opposed to understanding how to cultivate these sensitivities and abilities to really have a more of a spiritual experience and intuition. And these are gifts. And that was my big takeaway. You go on this healing journey, and I got the brain scans to prove it, right? My brain completely rewired itself. But on the other side of it, I understand ADHD as a Western construct, a pathologization of essentially just an archetype. And I don't even view it as I have ADHD. I just view it as I was diagnosed with ADHD, but now I have a different perception of these sensitivities.
Again, it's our perspective.
Right. And I feel like that's what you and me with this show seek to teach and explore.
Yeah.
And to give people these tools and to help people heal themselves with these tools, and also, heal, and by proxy, heal the culture with these tools.
And also, Cody and we're students of life. This is our greatest joy in the world, is talking to experts and people who we've become close with, so many incredible people who have dedicated their lives to exploring these very niche areas of our reality. And we like the idea of being able to bring them on and share their wisdom to have a greater understanding of what this reality is so beautiful. And we get to learn more as our audience gets to learn more. And we don't think that we know everything, because Cody always says the more that we think we know. Wait, what is it?
The more we know, the more we know we don't know anything.
Yes.
We are students,
Yeah.
but we want
Yeah.
to untangle and uncover the mysteries of life.
Yeah.
I mean, you can see that one of the things with these tools. So when I first worked with DMT, I'm in the Amazon rainforest and I'm snorting it out of a 3,500-year-old human finger bone
As
that's
you
been
do.
hollowed out.
Yep.
As you do. It's called the ceremony of life, death, and rebirth. It's one of the most beautiful ceremonies I've ever been a part of. And it was very early on my journey. But I remember the shaman explaining to us that how old this tool was that
The
we were
finger
about to
bone?
work with, the finger bone.
Yeah.
And he explained that essentially this ceremony was reserved for the highest members of their religious orders thousands and thousands of years ago. And this ceremony we were all doing was the initiation to the highest priesthood. That is what it was. And he was like, the fact that you today get to all just walk in here and just do this insane ceremony, you know, snort this DMT, go to another dimension, commune with God, whatever you want to call it. They're like, this did not exist. And this is the truth of these modalities and medicines, is that the religious institutions have co-opted these medicines. They've either demonized them and pushed into the shadows, or they would take them, hoard them, and reserve them only for the priesthoods,
Yeah.
the priesthoods. And the thing is that what we seek to deconstruct is the very concept of the guru, the shaman, the healer.
Yeah.
You as an individual are your own healer. Nobody can heal you. You can only heal yourself. And what we seek to do is to help to provide you with the tools and with the teachers to heal yourself and to make direct contact with the higher realms of consciousness.
If you choose to do so.
If you choose, or you can just look at us and listen to this show and be like, oh, these fucking,
Ooh,
they are weird.
Aliens. Wait a second.
Right. But, you know, all we can do is we can show you the way and tell you what worked for us, and then you can learn for yourself. But I would say, even beyond sort of taking the power out of the church and giving it back to the people, there is a more pressing matter at hand. Outside of it being able to heal the individual, there is a serious cultural significance to this conversation. And that has to do with what is popularly known as the national defense agenda. So, as we were saying earlier, when you are a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So, if you've been paying attention, whistleblowers have been coming out like Lou Elizondo and David Grush, who were running black budget, secret operative programs within the government, retrieving UFO and UAP, ships, crafts, and reverse engineering them. And so we know that the phenomenon for the past 100 years that has been covered up is 100% true. Now that this is all coming out into the public eye, there is going to be a fervor to essentially militarize against UAPs and UFOs, to take up arms. We already saw that under Trump's administration, they funneled millions of dollars into a space force, a space arm of the military. And there is going to be a big push, whether it's in the media or the government, to essentially view these forces as a threat. And this could lead us to nuclear holocaust. This can destroy the world if we choose to essentially view these beings as a threat. And this is the importance of this conversation, this show, and what we seek to demystify and bring to you right now is that they are not a threat.
This has also been going on since the beginning of humans.
Exactly.
Every ancient civilization talks about this. They all talk about these beings coming in their ships, coming here to help us, to, teach us things, whatever. And it's really people that are starting to either they have abduction experiences themselves, or they're working with the psychedelics and plant medicines, are actually being like, oh my God, wait a second. There's something else here. These people are right. They weren't myths. they weren't stories.
Right.
Like they weren't made up. It's history.
It's a story as old as time itself. And we have to understand that we are filtering this experience through the lens of science fiction. That's why we view this as a negative thing. But the truth is this is a supernatural spiritual phenomenon. And there are some people that are talking about this, but one of the things which is 100% true is that contact has already begun. And it's happening in these ceremonies, and it's happening on an individual level.
You know what's something that's really interesting to me? So Cody and I have been brought into the UFO, UAP, like disclosure community.
We're founding members of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. We work with a lot of people in Hollywood to essentially change the narrative around this.
Yeah. So, but the interesting thing that we have recently found out is that the community is very at odds with each other.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that they have varying views, and people think that this person's an op, or this person's a plant, or whatever it is, or this person's delusional, or whatever it may be. And one person thinks the ETs are positive, the other person thinks they're negative and they're going to kill us. So one's like, no, this is good, they're going to save us and help us, and the other person's like, they're going to kill us and destroy our planet. And so, of course, these two opposing sides their views are so opposite.
Right. It's either it's the end of the world. It's either the end of the world, or it's the savior of the world.
But as we kind of know, right, usually everything is neutral. There's a middle ground.
Yeah. We give the meaning to something.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but the experiences that Cody and I have had personally have always been positive. There's never been anything negative. And so for us, like, we can only go off of the stuff that we have personally experienced, because that's how we live our life. We hear stuff, especially with our social media culture. There's so much information and false information out there. I have to look up everything that I see on social media. I look up on like 10 different locations just to see if it's real, because most of the time it's not. It's just like clickbait or something like that. That's why we go through our personal experience, and that's how we have to live. And yes, we trust a lot of these people and we want to hear the information that these people have, but that's also why we have the show, to explore the supernatural, not just extraterrestrials, but everything that comes along with supernatural.
Right. And I think we should probably talk a little bit about the message, like what they are trying to communicate to us and what their interest is with us, from our own experiences, and also from just being so close to the movement.
Well, I mean, our own personal experience, everything has been love each other, heal the planet, here's how you heal yourself, come together. We're all one family, galactic and human. I mean, we can't even get along with the other humans on our planet. Like, of course, we're going to think that something from other galaxy is like a threat, because we can't even see that we're all just a bunch of humans. And we're like, but that's the other. It's like, no, we're on a floating rock in the sky together, guys.
Right.
Like, get your shit together.
Well, that's sort of the thing. People can't understand the interest and what's going on here. And I think Einstein famously said, you can't solve a problem by using the same level of thinking you used when you created it. And look around, we have a lot of problems.
I like that Einstein's really been a part of our show today.
Yeah. But seriously, the inmates are running the asylum, and we all have guns. And if you know anything about the history of UAPs or UFOs, look at the Battle LA, that famous photo of the military base shooting shooting machine guns at the UFO in the sky in the 40s. We attack them. We shoot them out of the sky. We literally develop technologies to shoot them out of the sky. They have Gandhian level of restraint with us, okay? I like to think that what they're doing with us is essentially, it's almost like you take a rabid dog in off the streets. You put him in a room, you come in and you just get a little food, a little water, you get close, it starts to growl at you in fear, and you just put the food in, you get a little closer. That's what they're doing.
Eventually you can pet the dog.
Yeah, exactly. They're making their presence known. They sort of let us think and ask questions and work it out, and then they move out of the equation, right?
And also that's why they're talking to people through telepathy, through these ceremonies, because it's less invasive, because you're deciding, you're saying, I'm taking this sacrament to go in and see what's on the other
Right.
side, and you do it, and you're making an agreement to go and speak to them.
There's also a phenomenon of psychic shock, which I don't know if we want to get into it this episode, but essentially this is an interdimensional phenomenon. Their vibration is so high, and it literally
It's intense.
It is so intense. It literally, you lose your sense of identity.
It can feel scary.
It feels like you're dying and losing your fucking mind to even get to the point where you're having a conversation. I'm so embarrassed to have this fucking virtually religious, like otherworldly, beautiful, like experience, and I'm just like fuck, like I'm in the fetal position, vomiting, like trying to pay attention. But the main thing I want to say is to go back to Einstein's quote about the same level of thinking.
Einstein's back.
Einstein's back, baby. Never left. There's from their point of view, everything is connected. I think Planck, he said that do something to the smallest grain of sand and affect the farthest star.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is connected.
Yeah.
Their health and our health is intrinsically connected. And specifically the health of the planet is intrinsically connected to them. And they seem to have a very, very serious interest in protecting not just the planet, but the multiplicity of beings on our planet
The
besides
reverberation
us.
also into the other galaxies, because if you think about it, if you believe in like the Big Bang, right? So there's the Big Bang, and then of course that means everything came from this one source, right? So we are all connected. We literally
100%.
come from the exact same thing. Even if you're scientific or religious, it doesn't matter. We all literally come from the same thing.
100%.
Just different words to explain it.
And it seems that their intervention, they cannot violate our free will. That is sort of the underpinning of the protocol that is taking place with us.
It kind of feels like something happened back in the day that stopped them from being able to interfere, because they were definitely like on the planet hanging out, talking and like doing stuff.
Literally every single ancient history has a story of a culture bringer.
But
Go
that's
look
what
at
I
the
mean.
Sumerian.
But I want to know what happened.
Look at the Sumerian stories. We take every single Sumerian story, cuneiform tablet, at face value, except their origin story, which is very much covers this. And the ending of it is all about violating our free will and piecing the fuck out. But anyways, specifically, this has to do with our nuclear arms. This phenomenon became popularized and most frequent after we invented the nuclear warhead. You know the band the Foo Fighters? I mean, that was a popular name during World War II for the UFOs that would appear during the battles. Every nuclear missile silo in America has had multiple or at least one UFO or UAP sighting. Typically, they show up at nuclear missile testings and shoot them out of the sky. There's many instances where they start all of the nuclear bombs, and it will start counting down 10, 9, 8,
Just scare
7.
them a little bit.
Yeah, and the military person will be running around trying to shut it off. Can't shut off. 3, 2, boom. The whole thing will shut down, which is so funny. When we saw Lou Elizondo a few weeks ago, he literally cited that as a reason for fear. But again, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
Obviously,
We like Lou, though. Lou was cool.
yeah, Lou's cool, and he'll come on the show. The whole point is they want us to denuclearize. And they want us to protect the planet, protect each other, and come together and harmonize. And they're really, if we can come together, we can merge heaven and earth, which really is some sort of flowery statement. But the truth is this is interdimensional. It's not heaven and earth. You're talking about dimensions. You're talking about expanding our consciousness collectively from a limited perception of separateness and stasis into an expanded awareness where everything is connected and we can see the true nature of reality, and we're not
doing it.
We're not limited.
And this is why everything has to change. If we can see that there's so much guck coming up, right? But that's what happens. All the guck comes up from the bottom when you're about to heal.
Right.
So we believe that the planet is healing, that humans are healing, that we're figuring this out, but all the guck is coming up right now and it feels like pure chaos.
Right.
But we really can create a better world. There's so many of us out here that are, trying to explore these things to make this place better.
Yeah, so I mean, the one thing I want to do is as we come to an end is just talk a little bit about what we are going to explore on this show. And because we came from science, but we have these supernatural and mystical experiences. We seek to merge the worlds. We seek to prove as much as we can or give language to create confidence so you can walk this path if you choose, especially if you are looking for healing. We've had the privilege of working with the most amazing teachers who are true blue wizards, like true blue
Straight up.
healers and mystics with, abilities that are I did not even know were possible. We like to say first contact happens here, and that is the truth. And that is what Ask for Squares we are going to do. We're going to take the supernatural out of the church. We're going to take the science out of the lab. We're going to bring it all together. We're going to get real fucking weird with it. Real weird with it.
Just a weird soup.
Yeah, a weird soup. And this is what we're going to do. We're going to take all of this and we're going to throw it under a microscope and we're going to hear what people have to say and we're going to find out how these people are able to do what they're able to do
and what it takes.
We're gonna not just sit here and go, is it a real phenomenon? Is it not?
It's like how to do it yourself.
Yeah. How do you reach that state of consciousness?
Again, you're your own guru.
Right. When you were
power back into your own hands.
Take the power back. When you don't give it to any authoritarian figure or structure or organization or corporation, and also find out, how do you do it? How do you tap in this way?
How do you do it safely?
How do you safely? Yeah. How do you heal yourself? And not just, were you abducted? It's, what the fuck did they tell you? What did they show you? Oh, you can channel?
What does that mean to you? How do you integrate that into your life?
Yep, 100%. We're going to reverse engineer this entire phenomenon so we can have a better understanding of what it means to be human.
And what the nature of reality is.
Just
like a little
the
subject.
True nature of reality. That's what the questions that matter most.
Yeah.
And then I love you and I'm so excited to be doing this with you. And to finally be doing this because Hollywood is super fucking toxic.
Yeah.
And there is such a fucking game of mimesis. It's like pre-chewed food. Everyone's doing the same thing over and over again because nobody wants to be fired and everyone's
also
afraid.
Keeping people numb.
Well, that's the thing is, being in this industry, it's fascinating to watch sort of the corporatization of the media artists in the field and that how because it's the best way to make money, they like to prey upon audiences like lower faculties, their reptilian brain, their fear, their sex, as opposed to serving the higher faculties of the human mind. Yes, it's not as easy. I mean, I've had a great writing teacher who used to say everything needs to be about survival, and that's how you get people to keep paying attention. But understanding that these companies and these media outlets are preying upon the lowest version of yourself. They're not serving and feeding the highest version of yourself. And that is what matters most, and becoming aware, just like if it's a drug or it's a food that's not healthy for you, to omit it and look for things that are going to uplift you and evolve you. And
that's what we're here to do.
That's what we're here to do. And this has been episode 1 of the Ask for Squares podcast.
It's about to get real
It's about to get real fucking weird up in this bitch. If you want to listen to our first show, Awaken Underground, which is just on healing with psychedelics, please, you can find it wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple, and stay tuned. Will be a weekly show, and we will have a lot of original digital shows that are to come out on our social media platforms. So please follow us, subscribe, stay plugged in, and in no time we'll be throwing events and just put your seatbelt on. Get ready.
Thanks, guys.
All right, be well.
Bye.